We're going to call the meeting to order this evening. We're at the Berlin Elementary School. We're excited to be here. Thank you for having dinner for us too. So welcome everybody. Calling the meeting to order at 6:17. As we gather today, I of course have a little to say, but as we gather today, I want to extend my heartfelt welcome to everybody to this forum. I was expecting more community members today, but we don't have a lot of community members. So it's like meeting / forum for learning. It is, it is great to be all together here. I actually kind of like the setup. We were not so sure with Stephen when we started, but it kind of, it's nice to be able to see each other. As your board chair, because of what we're going to be talking about today, I deeply believe that values play a critical role. It's funny because we were just in our equality committee and we were talking a little bit also, but I think, Jen, you brought up values, and I think values play a critical role in effective leadership and shaping not only our decisions, but our interactions. And as we, as a board, create the conditions for the learning to happen in our schools. And by that, I don't mean the conditions that our principals or administrators create, but we also help inspire, and we need to learn and grow together. So two values that I personally lean on in sort of my leadership that I'm still learning to be a leader, but leadership journey are integrity and humility. And with a little sprinkle of resilience, I want to say sometimes, like just that, trying to persevere, to keep moving forward when things get challenging or get hard. So it's sort of helped me strive to be authentic, which is what we all want to be in these spaces, especially today when we're going to be talking about learning together. And I hope that we can continue to foster trust among board members and the leadership team, and mostly so that we can continue our shared mission or vision to create a sustainable district for our communities. So as we open the meeting today, I encourage each of you to be grounded in our core beliefs, which I'm not going to repeat because you all know them by memory now. But to bring also some of your personal values and when you want to bring it to the space, let's use that. So I'll give you a minute after I'm done to think about that, but how those can help us strive to learn together and model a collaborative spirit and effective governance, since you all read the chapter. In part of that memo that I put in the packet, I was saying that we all hold that shared responsibility, everybody in this room, to grow as a learning community by continually seeking best practices in governance. We enhance, especially us as a board, enhance our ability to improve student outcomes while focusing on the critical roles of quality, equity, and sustainability in our schools. So I'm not going to get into the board part, but let's remind ourselves to align our efforts and strengthen our impact together through meaningful conversations today. And with that, I am going to open it up to, I have to move to some changes there's just that brief, not really changing our agenda, but just a small adjustment. There was a typo. The board operations should have been 45 minutes because we're going to have our board learning. And our superintendent evaluation student just told me that when we were chatting, won't take 40 minutes. So don't get stressed that we're going to be, I know snow is coming. So that would be less than 20 minutes. So somehow we'll make it all work. With that, I'm going to open it to public comments, and we're going to keep it strictly enforced to 15 minutes and a minute and a half per person at the beginning. There's going to be a time for dialogue for in the budget question answers. There's still questions from the last presentation. So it will be 30 minutes in the middle of the meeting, and then there will be as much time as community members need at the end of the meeting. So I already see some hands up online. There's nobody here in person. So Hani, if you wanna just give me a minute.
Yeah, we're just trying to make sure.
Oh no, wait. We just want to make sure that we can hear you. Hold on a minute. Spencer is doing some work too. Okay. me see. Okay, when you get started.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to ask this question, which may be a question for the board, but is also probably for the leadership team as they prepare the budget drafts. Last year, the board expressed concern with the inequalities among programming in the elementary schools. Specifically, it was decided that Rumney students would no longer receive world language because they were the only elementary school in the district to receive this programming. Losing this program was a great loss for our community and our students. Currently, we still have inequalities with our library tech program, and I seek to have equal library tech programming for all of our elementary students. Last year, I collaborated with my school librarian every week. This was incredibly important because I am the only teacher in my building who teaches the 2 grades that I teach. I have no grade-alike teaching peers in my building and no time for professional learning time with my district grade-alike peers. I relied heavily on the time to collaborate with my librarian so I could best support my students. Cuts to our librarians' FTE have taken this time away. So my question for the board is, what would it take, or what increase to FTE would it take to align our library and tech program so that all students in our district are getting the same programming and giving our teachers the constructive collaboration time? You may also ask this question of our health programs. Thank you.
Jaime. Thank you, Jaime. All right. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands for public comment. So seeing none, looking again here. Okay. Spencer, am I missing something? I don't see any other hands. No? Okay. So then we're gonna move on into our math program.
Is that me? Yes, okay. Spencer, so I am in here, now what am I doing? Share, okay. Okay. This helps when you're really nervous.
You can tell us why we're doing this since we didn't get to do it the last time.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So last year, you might remember that we actually met here around this time of the year, and I got to talk to you about some of the SEL work that our building was doing. And you heard that from every school in our district. This year, what you will be hearing from each of our principals is a focus on mathematics. So we are sharing this information with you because over the years, our math scores, oops, sorry. Oh, goodness.
No, actually, I need you for that.
So many things.
Yeah, it's confusing. Because it's not, your computer isn't allowing Zoom to share.
This is so fun.
Yeah.
Okay,
like you
that's
said,
my password.
the stress makes it more exciting.
You just missed it.
Okay, so you might remember that last year we talked about the SEL. This year you will see a focus on mathematics. We want to share this data with you as a board in each of our buildings. You've received the macro level from the district through Ed Quality, and we would like to kind of dive a little deeper into each of our buildings and share with you what our math data looks like in our buildings. So we're going to get to have a conversation with you about what our data looks like and what does that mean for instructional practices in our building. And what will be different this year from last year is that the template of the presentation should be the same. I made it look like a math notebook, but the content should be similar building to building. So while there was great variability last year, you will see probably more similarity just in the format of what to expect from each of us. What will vary, thank you. What will vary is some of the disaggregated data, depending on the size of our building, may vary. If the N size is too small, we can't share that with you. Okay. This is where I get really awkward, and I don't know if I stand up or sit down, but I'll go sitting. I start by sharing this from a place of vulnerability, right? I am a newer administrator to this district. I've been here for a year and a few months, and I am also a new administrator to iReady Math. So lots of new learning for me. And coming into Berlin last year, I spent the bulk of my time with SEL and with students and responding to behavior. If you remember, we had that SEL behavior systems coordinator position that was left unfilled for much of the year until Tyler Smith valiantly took that role in May, which has been lovely, and it's brought a great deal of stability to our system. So the opportunity to look at this data and engage with it in a different way with my staff is something that's really exciting. And there will be some parts that are kind of hard to share, right? That like there are parts that are areas for growth. So I share these two. Jim Knight is a wonderful. He's the grandfather or the father of instructional coaching, and this just gives us a really clear picture. We want a clear picture of our current reality, so I'm going to share with you what our current reality looks like. And then Michael Bunye Stain, I always say his last name wrong. Stephen, help me.
Michael Bunje Stanier.
Thank you. I always say Stanger with a G at the end. Anyways, but he talks about like go on failing, and just like when we learn about things, we want to do better next time. So what I'm going to share with you is what I know about what's happening, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what our buildings is doing to make things better. And then you all will get an opportunity as a board to reflect on what this means for you and what you will do with this information and the information you will be getting from other buildings. Okay. So this is a little bit about what math instruction looks like in our building. You will see we teach grade level, we teach math currently as single grade levels. And I'm realizing I made a mistake because my staff asked me to fix something today, so I apologize. In our kindergarten class, we have 20 students, and there's a math teacher, Mrs. Rogers. Our two first grades, that number should read 13 and 13, not 26 and 13, I apologize. Our second grade class, we have 14, and so forth. Our fifth grade class is our largest math cohort. We have 27 students in that class. They are all together for first instruction, and then we are utilizing this year our math interventionists to provide class size reduction. So during that time, they take groups of students. So there are not 27 students in there for the entirety of the math block. But they are our largest number. And as you will see from our district data and from the data I'm going to show you, they are one of our needier cohorts. And Mrs. Wagner, because our 5th and 6th grade multi-age classes, they specialize, so they are content specialists. So Mrs. Wagner teaches both 5th and 6th grade math. Mr. Igren teaches literacy. Wrong. Okay, so we're going to start by looking at the grade level performance data on the most recent diagnostic. This diagnostic was given in September, early September for our students. So the data is a little bit far removed for us, but it's the most recent diagnostic data that I have for you. So what you see here is what we would expect to see. That large yellow chunk is actually students that are being measured on their at the end of their year, the benchmark for the end of the year. So if you're a second grade student, you take your diagnostic as if you are a end of the year second grade student. So the yellow is okay at the beginning of the year. So the shaded green you'll see all the way to the left is students who are mid or above grade level at the start of the year. The unshaded green is early on grade level for the beginning of the year. The yellow is 1 grade level below. The unshaded red is 2 grade levels below, and the shaded is 3 grade levels below. Questions about the shading or what you're seeing currently? Okay.
What
Yep.
does what student population does it represent? Because
That's a great question. It's K-6. This is our entire
that is
student
adding up, sorry.
population right
I
now.
need
Yep.
math help too.
Yep.
I couldn't do the math fast enough to
Yep.
see if that was enough numbers.
It's okay. It is K-6. I am also going to invite Jen, M.A., if I misspeak on anything, please nudge me because I'm trouble. So this is K-6, and you'll see the breakdown placement by domain. That looks at each area that's within iReady, so different domain areas in math. When I look at those 2 bars next to each other, what I am happy to see is that there's not one that is a dramatic outlier to our overall performance, right? So if you look at that top bar graph, the other 4 underneath look relatively similar. Are you seeing that? Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have a pointer or anything, so I'm feeling a little. Okay, so we're gonna then look at this by grade level. So these are all of our current classes. Again, what you would want to see at this time of the year is a graph that kind of looks like the kindergarten graph. You want to see smaller amounts of the shaded red or unshaded red. So if you'll, if you see here, you can see these percentages are all again correlated to the shaded colors above them. So you can see here that our older grade levels, our 5th and 6th graders, have the most students who are farthest below grade level given.
Is that also something that you would commonly see? That as you get older, the kids who are a little bit behind gets more as they've kind of dropped behind in years, or not necessarily?
I would hope that wouldn't be the
Okay.
case, but yes, that is.
And is the K all yellow because there isn't a pre-K grade, or is it just yeah.
Yeah.
You can't be 2 or more grade levels.
Right.
Below in kindergarten. We are seeing, what I can say anecdotally about our kindergarten classes, that they're a very strong academic class.
Great.
They're like the most lovely little group of kindergartners. They really are. We're at like all school meeting, and they're like the ones that are just like sitting and waiting and quiet, and I'm like, there's so many of you, and you're so lovely. So we're gonna disaggregate. We're gonna disaggregate by gender, and we're gonna disaggregate by free and reduced lunch or economically disadvantaged populations, and then we're gonna look at special education. Those are the levels that I can disaggregate for you.
You just move the
I'm sorry, am
microphone
I going
too.
to?
You can move it.
Just
Celia.
move it towards you.
Okay.
Or online.
Okay, I apologize to those of you online. What you will see here, and this question was asked by my staff, the state level data does not report they do not have a non-binary category for students. So we have to report by male and female. We recognize that there are students for whom in our population that does not match, but we are bound right now by the way that the state reports. So it is broken by a sex assigned at birth and what is reported in Infinite Campus. So you can see here that our male, in our most recent diagnostic, that our Male students are more closely, I didn't say that the right way, but you will see that more of our male population is where we would expect them to be at the start of their grade level. Our economically disadvantaged are students who are on free and reduced lunch or who come from the direct certification list from the state. There is a wide disparity here for our staff, for our building. This is a historical trend for our district as well. So we are not different necessarily in that trend. I can't speak to exactly what the percentage difference is and if that is the same from the district, but that is something that we have talked about as a staff. And we've been talking about to what level are there biases that we have? Are there any implicit bias that we have in our interactions or in our systems, the way that our systems are set up for students? And then we look at our special education. This mirrors the district as well. As you saw at the end of the year last year when we looked at equity indicators, many of our students who are receiving special education services are not achieving the growth that we would expect them to. In our next set of data, we're going to look at growth data for the year. And our students who are furthest behind, we should be seeing the most growth from. That's the goal. So again, looking at special education. Rates are very different. There's about a 30% difference between students who are one grade level below at the beginning of the year to those that between special ed and students who are not eligible for special ed services. So this data that we're moving towards is our growth data. And this data is pulled from the spring of 2024. So this is far removed, but it's the most recent data point that I can share with you. When my colleagues share with you in January and through the end of the year, you'll be able to compare from fall to whenever you happen to hear from them. So you might have 2 benchmarks or 3 to look at. So our progress towards annual typical growth, the goal would be that's at 100%. This is I'm gonna try, Jen. This is we would like that to be at 100%. It is a median percentage of students who are achieving their growth. Okay, did I say that right, Jen? Okay, all right. So ideally, we would have 100% at the median level. So we'd have students that had achieved over 100%, which is what we want, that annual typical, what we would expect. And then we would have some students who would be lagging behind. When you look at our data, this is an area for growth for us to really increase that percentage, that median percentage of students who are achieving annual typical growth. That's something that we talked about today. This is our grade level overview. What is different from this chart from the first is that these are the kindergarten class are our current first graders, second graders, and so on. The 6th graders that you see here are 7th graders at U32. Everyone on board with that? Okay. So what we see here is that we have some areas of strength, and we have some spaces where we met growth, which is fantastic, and I feel really good about that. That 1st to 3rd grade, that band is very strong for us. And then our 5th grade came very close to getting towards that 100%. Something else I want to point out. The first column you see there says annual typical growth. The second column says annual stretch growth. The way that iReady sets things out is they say this is the benchmark for your annual, and if you're really rocking it, you're going to hit this like stretch growth if you're reaching beyond. That's and they come up. There's a whole formula that they calculate to give you that stretch growth. So what we would hope is that we would have 20 to 30% of our students achieving that stretch growth. None of our grade levels hit that, but again, that second and third grade came very, very within, much closer than some of our other grade levels. So they're at 25% and 22%. So they're getting closer to that 20 to 30%. Keely, did you have a question?
No, it just seems like if you're using 20 to 30%, they hit it, right?
Yeah.
Is it 20 to 30 or is it 30,
So
Jen?
20 to 30.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, that's exciting.
And you got
I had
3
30
grades that
stuck in
hit
my
it, I
head,
think.
So we're gonna be some overachievers. So we did 2, 3, and grade 5. We got that 20% stretch growth. So, and then the next column over is this number of students who improved on their placement, which means that if they started at that shaded red, I was 3 grade levels below when they retook or that they improved on their placement. So that's a good measure, something we would want. We don't want someone to stay in the shaded for life. Okay. This is something that is unique to my building. I don't know how this gender disparity breaks out in all of my other buildings, but this is one that really made me pause and our staff pause today. We all kind of went, oh boy. What you see here, and in the disaggregated data, some of the N sizes are too small to share, but we see that by and large, at most of our grade levels, our males are meeting their annual typical growth, and our females are not. So we are starting those conversations around what does that look like for us, and do we have bias in the way that we're asking kids questions? How are we creating spaces so that female students in our buildings can see themselves as mathematicians? This does not mean that they don't have the skills, right? We had a lovely conversation today about, is it that do males spend more time on technology? Are they more comfortable with the technology? And we had some great ideas around, well, in the iReady Math program, they give lesson quizzes, and you can do those. It's okay. You can do those. You can do those in paper version and on the computer. So we were talking about, maybe we should try that in a classroom and see, is it different for your girls if they're on paper or not? We were all kind of like, whoa, give it a try, right? We're talking about different strategies in order to increase and just check. Am I calling on the males more frequently? Are they louder? Or are they more confident? And how are my girls reacting? Can we just check in and say, how do you feel about math? And what could we do to make math feel more comfortable for you? Sometimes we don't want to over-engineer the problem. We just want to ask, how does math feel for you? And what can we do to help you feel better during math?
So,
yes.
How is the growth measured?
It is measured by the iReady diagnostic.
So is that written, answering questions measurement?
It is. It's a computer-based program. So they log on to the computer and they take a series of questions.
Is there any correlating information from years past that you can compare what you have here with, and whether the trends are similar or different? And if they're different, how are they different? I mean, I'm just asking if you have that type of data. I assume you do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
We can go back 3 years.
3 years. Yeah. I think that would be a really interesting look at that. I don't know if that has been historical for our building, but that would be an interesting. I did not think to go a couple of years back to share with you, but that would be a really interesting day to day. So I don't have the answer to that for you. I guess that's fine. But if it is this, because there is such a disparity, I would venture that it has probably been an issue for us in the past. I know for certain that the disparities in special education and economic advantage has been consistent for our building specifically. And it sounds like, Jen, you were saying from the district as a whole, that's been consistent, those 2 categories. Yep. So that's something that we're really thinking about. It's something that our staff kind of went, when one of my teachers said, I just want to teach all my girls by themselves. And I said, yes, and we have to give them skills. Like, if math happens to be their passion, like, we need to, like grow the skill set. Like, where's the lacking skill deficit, right, that we need to help you feel confident in that math answer. So both and, you know, do we have a math club? What do we think about, you know? So lots of different ideas, and something that we're working on as a staff. We're looking at our economically disadvantaged. What is interesting in this growth data for this particular subset, and I went back and checked it because I was like, is that we don't show as much of a discrepancy in the growth data as we do in the discrepancy that is there in our iReady diagnostic from the fall is not shown in our growth data from the spring. I don't know why that is, but I will be really curious to look at it in January and see if that disparity is there or not. I don't know. It was just one of those things that was kind of puzzling. But okay. Special education, we still see we do see a disparity there. And we would expect, I would want to see more of a much higher percentage of students reaching their stretch growth in special education. We did not hit the 20% in those categories. Okay. So iReady Math also has a component to it called MyPath that is an individualized, differentiated tool that students can use. They log onto the computer and it gives them, based on their diagnostic results, gives them things to work on. So MyPath is a great resource. The district expectation is that we are utilizing MyPath for at a minimum of 30 minutes a week. So this is also an area of growth for us. If you look at our data from the past month, this is an average over the past month. What is positive is that of the students who are utilizing MyPath regularly, you want to see at least an 80% passage rate. So we have a high number of students who are passing, which is good. We need to increase the number of students who are using that. We have students that are not utilizing MyPath. Some, as you'll see next, some grade level is not using it. And then we have pockets of students, and there's a variety of reasons why they might not be. They might be pulled from a service for a service when their class is using MyPath. There's lots of different reasons for that, but it's an area for us to look into and to just be more mindful of. You know, I was talking with my staff around just how are you monitoring it? What is that looking like? Are you sending incentives for your class to hit their goals? Things like that. So you can see here, these are just the grade breakdowns of students who are using it, grade levels that are using it. You see here, we have a good portion of our students who are using it between 10 and 30 minutes. We need to kind of up that, so it's a good place to start, and we can boost it up. And then that says over the last month, if you look at this week, it looks better, so that's good. That's great. And you can see we have a higher percentage of students where they should be in that 30 to 49 minutes of MyPath usage. iReady is using that diagnostic, are there questions about the slides that we just looked at before I go on to the last few slides that I can answer? Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Blaine.
It's mostly maybe I'm not understanding right, in the first couple of slides, there was a great disparity in grades 5th and 6th.
Yep.
But then when you went to the individual classes in the last few slides, so what am I missing? It looked better in the last, on that one.
This one?
Yeah.
Yes.
The
It-
grade level overview? When you're
yes.
looking at different
Groups.
For the growth data,
for
they are
the
different
growth.
groups. Yeah,
Oh,
so that
different
would be,
groups. Okay, so that's what I was
that's the
missing.
grade 4 that you see. The grade
Okay.
5 that was struggling, right, is the grade 4 that's here.
Okay, I missed that. That
Yep.
was different.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I
Thank you.
apologize. I should have highlighted that again. So My Path is a great tool, and I think it's a way in which you can differentiate very easily without a lot of legwork. So I think it's just a reminder that this is a really important tool. And sometimes it doesn't feel great because it is on the computer, but it is an easily accessible tool that students can use daily for short amounts of time, and it will make growth. Students will make progress. So there are other forms of assessment data. I kind of have these scaled to like least formative on your, or formative on your right and less formative on your left. So things like other data points that we use daily, teachers can talk about this so eloquently, but sessions, quizzes, and unit assessments and check-ins, like mini quizzes or check-ins with small groups of students. Our interventionists are using the Acadians math benchmark assessment for some of their intervention groups, exit tickets and surveys and quick responses. And then it's super important that our teachers use dialogue with their classes to understand where kids are. So asking open-ended questions, engaging them in call and response, and, you know, thumbs up, thumbs down, like where are we at, like traffic, you know, there's all kinds of different ways for kids to let you know that they're on board and they're learning. That's all happening as well. We're not just putting all of our eggs in the iReady diagnostic. Teachers are utilizing assessment tools daily. The next few things, we are also increasing, as I shared at the beginning. We didn't get to take a ton of time last year to look at data because we just weren't there. But we are now, and we're building some systems. So weekly, we have school data meetings. So I meet with our each grade level weekly, and we meet with all of the interventionists. And we have a rotation of looking at math and literacy data every week. And so it might be bring your most recent unit assessment or bring your session quiz to look at. And we're talking about kids and what it looks like in the classroom weekly. We have also identified more time at staff meeting to review data at a school-wide level. So we're looking at math data. We've been looking at behavior data as well and looking for trends and noticing, do they correlate? You know, our staff today was like, let's overlay the behavior data with the January iReady and see what it shows us. So there are lots of other ways that we are utilizing in the structures of our building to be more intentional in using data to guide our practice. And then our intervention structures. Our schedule this year supports 2 30-minute WIN blocks, one for math and one for literacy. They are embedded within the class's time for literacy or math. So it might be that there's a 90-minute literacy block and the last half an hour is the WIN block for the class. So it's sort of the intention of that time is that the class is doing some math menu work and then students are kind of rotating in and out to get what they need. So that is something that's very different, and I think we are being much more intentional about the interventions that we're using with students. All 4 of our interventionists are also strongly collaborating with Ellen Dorsey, where we're at the end of each quarter, or at the end of each semester, we are pausing for like a 3-day stint. Our interventionists are collecting all of their data. They're meeting with Ellen. They're reviewing the data. They're talking about intensifying their interventions and then making a plan to move forward with groups, exiting students, not exiting students. So that is a new system that we have implemented this year, and we are being much more intentional about the data that we're using and talking about, and that's something that I feel really good about. This is just a little screenshot of, this is actually reading Acadian's progress monitoring tool, but you can see that the system itself progress monitors individual students. So this is a student's progress, and you can see all these little data points are all check-ins that the student has done, and you can see from the start here at 0, you can see that they're gaining and getting much closer. So it's just a visual for that. And then I get to share with you at the end math in practice in our building. And the kids were so funny. I was I'd come in to try to take a picture, and they'd all turn around and look at me. I was like, no, look like you're doing math. So when you go into our classrooms, you will see math menus that are out for students to utilize. In this bottom left-hand corner, I went into a first grade class, and Mrs. Maring had 10 stools set up, and she had students pretending to get on and off this bus. They were looking at 10's partners, and it set them up to play this game that then you can see on the right-hand side, the bus. It went into the slideshow in iReady, and then they had some book work that they were doing, and it was just a beautiful start to a math lesson, and the kids were hysterical. They were like, Mrs. G, you need to get on the bus. We need 11 kids. I was like, all right, let's go. Here's just a quick little video of a third grade class in action. Kids are all engaged in different work. Some students are working individually with adults, which is really exciting. And the audio's not playing right now, but you can hear the teachers giving directions. It's pretty great. And then this is another little small group here working with a teacher.
Okay.
The teacher was... All right. And then these are just some other pictures of kids. Okay, so these are just some other pictures, different math menus, and then you'll see here there's this math wall that's it's a love project of one of my teachers, and it supports and enforces the concepts in iReady, and then she's like, but these 4 over here, these are all me. So that's in a few of our classrooms. That's sort of spreading the idea of math wall and making it visible and making it an everyday practice. It's also in that classroom down in the middle. So while we have some areas of growth, we have a lot to celebrate and the good things that are happening in our building. My questions to you as a board would be, what questions do you have for me? What strikes you as significant, and how will this inform your work as a school board? 3 big questions, really easy to answer, I know.
Just a kind of a question or comment maybe about the discrepancy with economically disadvantaged students.
Yes, absolutely.
And when I see that number, a lot of what I think about is often disadvantaged students don't have their basic needs met. Mm-hmm. And so when I think about, budget level stuff, it's how are we making sure that those basic needs are being met in order to allow children to have access to learning. Because I don't actually think it has a lot to do with curriculum, but I think it's more about accessing that curriculum. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciated the images of the learning in action, because what it demonstrated to me was that you're utilizing that differentiated learning with your students, and in some situations, probably meeting some of that basic need to connect on a more intimate level for some of them. So I really think that's great, and I appreciate that. I also would be interested in seeing, when you're looking at the discrepancy for gender for females, I would be interested to see how that changes each grade level, because my suspicion and hypothesis, and maybe it was up there, I didn't catch it, I apologize, is that as they get older, there's a larger discrepancy, and part of that is because STEM is not something that is geared towards females in general in our world. And so I really like that we're thinking about that, and I think that it has larger implications for us as a district, because STEM jobs need females, and that's just not what we see right now. And so I appreciate that that's something we're thinking about, and it's something that I'm going to be really pondering as we kind of move through the process with all the schools. So thank you very much.
I know, thinking about like the math that my son brings home versus what I learned in school, it's very, very different. And I know that it's conceptually much deeper than it used to be. What supports are we providing to teachers to help deal with that? Or also, what supports are we providing to help families who are sort of getting back and going, I don't know how to help. It's totally different than what I learned.
Like, why are you drawing a picture here? That's not how you do division. Like, what is that? Yeah. I think that varies by school. I think that we could definitely do more to support families in terms of our communication home and what that looks like. Things like family math nights and things like that, I think are ways that we can support and engage. In terms of teachers, I just had this conversation with a teacher this week. It was around like the number of strategies. She's like, yeah, we're doing a really great job at teaching a lot of strategies. And sometimes I just need to say to a kid, like, that's a great strategy, but it's not going to work for you yet because we need to be really solid on our facts. So let's backtrack to the facts. Like, really great that you have this. Why do you have all of these strategies? So let's find the one that's going to be best for you. So it's like finding that best right fit. So I think it's in conversation with each other and with kids, to be honest with them. Like, awesome strategy, but if it's going to take you 45 minutes to solve this problem because you're like really excited about drawing the picture, it may not be your best strategy.
It seemed to me that the disadvantaged, economically disadvantaged students and the special ed students were kind of parallel in terms of their appearance on the chart.
Yeah.
Do you know why that is? I'm assuming there may be some cross-population there, but is it more than that, too?
I think that you are right in your assumption that there is some cross-population. What I would have, I can't show because the n size gets too small, but you can run the graphs side by side and overlap the population, so you can see where they are the same. There is some similarity for sure.
The other question, in helping students advance, what is the best resource that you have available or would like to have available that has an exponential effect? Or that you think could have an exponential effect?
I think time. I think the best resource that we can utilize for our teachers is professional learning time. We know that the best way to improve student outcomes is to make layer one, tier one instruction more effective. And the best way to do that is through having more collaborative time with teachers, whether that's weekly team meetings, whether that's PD days. It's investing in things like instructional coaching. It's really, that's how we get the most bang for your buck. So if I were queen of the world, I would want like more professional development for my teachers, and I'd love, like, I don't know, an extra 4 hours in the school day. But no,
one seems easier than the other.
Yeah. But in reality, most certainly, being really intentional about what our PD plan is as a district and investing heavily in those resources would be really important. And then I think being consistent in each building about what those opportunities for collaboration look like. And then encouraging school to school, because it is really isolating if you are the only teacher. I heard Honey say, I'm the only teacher. Like, sometimes I feel like that as a principal, right? Like, I'm the only one here. Like, it's just, I don't know, okay. Right? So there's that how can we be really intentional about a system and invest in that collaboration to really make tier one best.
And I just want to add, just remember that thought about the professional development plan, because you're about to see it again in the superintendent's goals and our strategic plan. So I just want you to.
That was not a plant, just for the record.
I was the plant. Stephen asked me to ask that
Okay, all right.
You got the money. You get an extra minute.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say, as a student, like one thing that I find really helpful, and obviously you just talked about this, so it's perfect timing, is just having the chance to work with teachers and ask questions about stuff you don't understand.
Yeah.
Like that is the most helpful thing that a student can have learning, or in my experience it is, just because typically it's explained, like, I don't know, it's just helpful to have that like one-on-one time with a teacher or an administrator, not administrator. Well,
I'll sit down and talk to you.
You were my math teacher last year. You subbed for Drew for AP Pre-Cal. It was really fun.
I think how this informs our work, it makes me feel good about our budget parameters, because we included,
No, it's
I
pointed
was
down.
pointing down. Oh, did I?
I'm with you, Floyd.
Yeah.
Couldn't figure out the mic there.
So in the budget parameters, we've been intentional about, professional development and multi-layer systemic supports, and that understanding that, tier 1 has to meet 80% of the student needs, right? So that's something where we can keep putting our resources towards that and make sure that we're not compromising that. So that informs that, so. And thank you for the
Yes.
presentation.
Thank you.
This is very informative, and can't wait to see it across our schools.
Yeah, incredibly helpful just to go through the data and see what you all are looking at and where your focuses are and your plan for going forward. So really thank you for sharing. I feel like I learned a lot.
If you have any other questions, feel free to email or carrier pigeon, stop by my office.
Okay. So with that, I don't see any other hands from board members, so I'm going to keep us moving into the strategic planning update, and I'm going to give it to you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you. So we have two sections here, that's strategic planning update and superintendent goals. They are pretty much one and the same. So if you were able, I sent it to you electronically this afternoon, but also there were copies of it over there for the superintendent goals. And I know that we've looked at our strategic plan, and we tend to, right now, really focus on our core beliefs and values. And I think that that's great because it's our grounding for the work that we do. But what I would also like to kind of move us towards is we have goals. So we have these 3 goals in our strategic plan. Goal 1 is build and nurture a culture of well-being and inclusivity. Goal 2 is to challenge, empower, and engage each student through evidence-based instructional strategies and curriculum and varied educational opportunities. And then goal 3 is foster and commit to responsible leadership that engages the community and communicates transparently. So what we've talked about, and this goes back to when we met in our board retreat as well, is how do we start to actualize this? How do we, these action steps that we have here, and building that? And what I want to draw your attention to is on page 13 of the packet is a chart in which we are going to start for each of the goals and each of the action steps, starting to track the tasks that we're doing, who's been doing them, when we're doing them, and what evidence are we generating as a result of all of this. And so I wish I could come to you and say, oh, here's 100 things we've already done. We haven't done 100 things yet. We're just getting started, part of this process that we're doing. But I would say that the first one there under goal 1 and the first action step, design and implement social emotional learning standards, instruction and assessment. So I would say to you, our curriculum council is already working on that. Our principals are eagerly awaiting them to come with a curriculum and an assessment. And then this begins the process of having an SEL curriculum, social emotional learning curriculum, standards, instruction, and the assessment that goes with it so that we can start to track those things and bring those to you. So there is work that is starting, and what you'll start to see is we're going to start populating this so that you as a board can see, okay, here's how we're making progress towards these things. And what it's going to illuminate, and this is what we learned back when we did our first broad look at proficiencies and how our kids were doing, we found that there were places where we had nothing, right? And we realized that our curriculum didn't cover that. And what we'll realize here is that we have not devoted resources or time or something to some of these action steps. And those are going to be the things that we need to really focus on. And so I know we gave a lot of time for this, and I appreciate the time, but what I also want to show you is in the superintendent's goals, you will see that my goals are the goals of the strategic plan. I've never quite fully understood why my goals wouldn't be the strategic plan as the superintendent. And there are other things that I will do in the course of a year other than these things, but in terms of goal setting, this is what's important to us. This is what our values are measured by. And, oh yeah, I'm sorry. I actually have it.
Open, I can share.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I will share the documents here in just a moment for those online too. And so what I broke down, and I think this is a good kind of crosswalk between the two, when you look at my strategic plan goals, you can see a little more detail there. So when you look at the build and nurture a culture of well-being and inclusivity, there's the goal, which is design and implement social emotional learning standards. And then there's the indicators of progress, and that's going to be the reports to the board. The SEL learning standards themselves will be indication of here's what we're looking at, and the assessments. And then the engagement of the curriculum council in the development of standards and assessment is one of those supports and resources that is there for that. Now, I've also tied these to some of the VSBA standards, and in the email, not in the one that I copied over here, but in the email, the entire rubric for how you'll evaluate me is there, and we'll be doing that jointly, so that you're looking at, I should be providing you evidence. That evidence will be in things like the chart that I just showed you for the strategic plan, and in my document as well. So I just want you to kind of see how these things are fitting together, so that we as a board can start to measure that progress. And so my goal is, in the next couple of months, is to start populating this so you can start to see the work that we've been doing so far this year. And then as we move towards the second half of this year, you will actually say, yes, this is the progress that we would like to see for you as a superintendent and the district as a whole, because the success of the district is a success for me. And then we will be able to say, okay, so what's the next steps? What do we need to do? Where are there holes? You're going to find gaps in my evaluation, just like we saw gaps in data for kids. You're going to find gaps in my evaluation where there's areas where I can improve, we can improve as a district, and we can keep moving forward. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of just glance through the goals and really, you know, if there's anything that jumps out at you, if there's anything that you're like, I'd like to know more about this in the future, anything like that. I just wanted to give you that opportunity as a board to look at that and to come up with some ideas. I'm going to share this document with everybody online so that they can see it as well. And let me. All right. And I think, yeah, so there's the document online if people see it in the chat. You're welcome to.
Stephen, I have a question about strategic goals. One of the parts of like goal number 2.
Go for it.
You said partner with students to inform curriculum and instruction. What are your plans for that?
So actually, that's actually outlined a little bit better in my evaluation plan. Mm-hmm. And so what we would look to do is see how can we partner with students in curriculum and professional development. We've had times in the past where we've had students serving with curriculum committees. We've had some professional development with kids involved, and we need to resurrect some of those kinds of things. And so my job as superintendent is to help create those structures so that those happen. And that's, we've talked about, do we have student representation to our curriculum council? How do we engage so that our students are vetting it? Maybe it's a student council, you as a student board member, other students that are involved. We've had SSJ, so Seeking Social Justice has been involved in some things. Our BLAM group has been involved with some of this as well. And we just need to formalize those processes for how do students get engaged with it and how do they do that. As well as, I know that Becca at the middle and high school level has reached out to Up for Learning for them to engage students in some of that same work. And we just need to coordinate some of that so that our kids have a greater voice in all of it. And so when you see in my evaluation, it's partnering with Up for Learning, student council, student board members. There's also other student organizations that will need to be there. And if you look, the timeline for that is more spring of 2025. I would love for everything to happen right now, but I tried to at least space these things out so that they may initially get started in the spring or summer of next year, even a few of them in the fall, so that we can just have not an overwhelming amount of work for everybody to get involved in. But it's a great question because we don't see as much involvement as we would like to right now.
I just saw that and I was like, ooh. That's
Yeah.
more of interest.
And I will just say that I didn't develop all of these action steps and goals. I wasn't part of that committee, but I wholeheartedly agree that this is the work that we need to do. This was developed from a lot of thoughtful process around what's important to us as a district. And it'll change its shape over time because we'll learn more and we'll engage more. And we'll probably add in action steps along the way. Daniel?
Could we have a reminder of what the Curriculum Council is and does?
I'm going to turn that to Jen.
Here she
Do you
is.
want the mic? Do you want the mic, Jen, just for people online?
Yeah, the Curriculum Council. Yeah, oh. You want me to use that one? Curriculum Council is a group of teachers and administrators from all of the buildings. We get together to do the big curriculum level work, to systematize, to coordinate both horizontally and vertically. Our primary area of focus right now is supporting the full implementation of Act 173 with a specific focus on writing and functional skills because those were areas that we determined needed more support. This year, Curriculum Council has been working more effectively than I think it has in many, many years because our principals made the commitment to have it be a teacher leadership position, which means that folks needed to meet criteria to be teacher leaders, and then we come outside of the contracted day and meet so that it's a stipended position. And so we typically meet on second and fourth Mondays to engage in the work. Some of what we've been doing has been related to articulating what the work is of curriculum camp that I've talked about a lot, especially at Ed Quality Committee. We're in the process of developing a survey about K-6 writing practices so that we can continue to grow and understand the professional learning plan that's been mentioned, those sorts of things. So that's what it is.
And what I would point out there is under operational management and leadership in the rubric, there's a thing called delegation of duties from the superintendent. And so I just want to point out that's how it works right there. But that we have a group of people. My job is to make sure that as a system, this work is getting done. I don't necessarily physically do the actual work that's in the strategic plan, but it's my job to make the environment and the resources available for those things to happen. And so I think that's sometimes, why didn't I do that? Well, that's not something I do personally, but I make sure that we have the conditions for it to happen.
Well, yeah, and then there's probably a bias in the district, an organization, any organization as large as ours, to have it be top-down and centralized, and tools like the Curriculum Council allow it to be more decentralized and more ground up in
Yeah, and I would say that just in my own leadership style, as we talk about my evaluation, is that my leadership style is to try to delegate that authority and that ability to do that work to others. Like, I want the principals to make decisions about their schools because they're closer to what's happening, right? I'm not going to make the best decision about what should happen in each individual school. The principals and their work with their staffs and the leadership structures within their buildings are better suited to make those decisions. My job is to make sure that they have those resources and the support needed to be able to do that. And so that's what I hope you evaluate me on is, how well are we creating those structures and those systems to make that possible? Yeah. Any other questions around our strategic plan, my evaluation? I will also say, for me, I want to keep, as part of our transparency, is to try to do as much of the evaluation process in open session as possible. I think there are a few times where we were going to want to go in and have a really, let's have a real good talk within executive session, but I think we want to be real specific about when we do that. My job's a pretty public job anyway, and so, most of the time, people are going to see me here in these situations. And so, as much of the process that can be public as possible, I really want to encourage that for us to do, because, there's really shouldn't be a whole lot that I hide from all of this, but I do think that there are conversations that we probably will want to have in executive session, but I want to try to limit those as much as possible. So that's just kind of my own preference.
Thank you, Stephen. So if there's not any other questions, I think in the packet, just for you to know, and I think Stephen referenced that, there is the same table exists for goal 2 and goal 3.
Oh, yeah. We
just included a sample on how it's going to be monitored, and that was a collaborative thing between
the Great Schools
Partnership and ourselves with the committee. On a tool so that we make sure that we were monitoring.
Right.
Okay. So now we move to our budget questions and answers. What we were going to try to do is say, I don't have access to the latest. I was hoping to tell you how many responses we have so far, but I don't have access to the tool. But we are not closing the survey until Friday before our next board meeting. So what I wanted to do is just open it. We mostly have public just online. So we have this 30 minutes for a Q&A because that was really popular at our last meeting, and I think we could potentially start with the question that we put it in that Honey just asked. But we have the 3 questions of the surveys what we were going to use to try to keep us grounded. So what are your biggest takeaways from the budget presentation? What are your concerns about the budget? And one seems especially important, and what would you like to prioritize? So any of those questions, I'm opening it to the public to ask, either give us feedback or ask questions. So please raise your hand. There's no members of the public here on site, so please raise your hand online if you have questions. Otherwise, I'm going to open it up for Stephen to respond to that first question.
Or Suzanne.
Or Suzanne.
She's here to help me.
Yeah, or Jen. It's a collaborative process. Any questions? We do have 39 participants, but that includes some administrators and staff.
I could go ahead and just address a little bit of Honey's question to us, which was providing some equality to the services of, say, library media was kind of the particular example. And when we looked at our distribution of our layer 1 and layer 2 resources for all of our schools, that ratio of service for students was the same across all of our schools. And so when we talk about equalizing our services, we tried to do so through the formula that we provided in staffing. And I would say that that's where we started. Now, there's also within each school, because of what layer 3 through 6 supports in that multi-layer system of supports are needed, schools had some options on what they wanted to add as those additional services that are needed. I also want to point back to something that Floor said, that the layer 1 and 2 should be serving 80% of our students. It should be meeting 80% of our needs. So all of that base staffing that we did should be meeting about 80% of all of our needs. We know that it doesn't fully. I want to be clear about it. It doesn't fully because we have more need in some areas. But increasing our ability to do better layer 1 and 2 instruction and services means that we support more kids in that. Those additional supports that we provide are really meant to cover the 20% of our students who are struggling. And that varies. That's the general idea behind a multi-layer system of support, is that you cover the needs of 80% of your kids with those first 2 layers, and the 20% that need additional support are supported in those other layers. And so I would go back to library and media. We would certainly, we allocated time to meet those needs, and if there were some additional needs, the principals had additional funds if they wanted that. And so that might create a place where one school decided that the library media would be a better intervention than, say, a school counselor because of the needs of the kids within that school. And that's going to cause some of those discrepancy in final numbers that we have. And so
Thank you, Stephen.
that's the first.
So is there a safety valve for, like Honey's situation, where it sounds like because of the small staffing population, that she's not getting collaboration that other teachers in other districts, schools may be? And it sounds like it's a real loss in terms of serving students, as she does at Doty. Is there a safety valve for trying to provide some extra support for someone in that situation? And it's going to be the same question I'm going to raise for, the outcry that we're having about.
Chris.
Let me just similar question on the other media library and support staff, like nursing staff issues that we've been hearing about publicly.
Yeah, can I think about it for just a minute? And we'll take some of the questions.
Yeah.
for that.
And Chris, can I just clarify that we're trying to give this time to the public,
Yeah.
and then you would have time as a board member to ask questions after.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Laura Lee, hopefully I'm saying your name right.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Hi, I guess I was interested in some of the answers to questions that came up last week around in terms of with the budgeting starting from the ground up, how that was affecting programming and staffing with the current status of all the buildings. And so my question really is that going to be discussed, presented tonight, or is that for another evening?
So the adjustments and FTEs to the schools was provided to the board this afternoon. It's there, and I just put the link to it in the chat so that you can see those adjustments that were made to FTEs at individual schools.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Laura Lee. Amber?
Hi, thanks for allowing me to speak. I'm speaking hopefully to express my concern regarding the proposed reduction of nursing support in our district. As a school nurse at U32 and an advocate for student health, I feel it's crucial that we consider the potential consequences of reducing school nurses. In recent budget discussions, the school board has always supported the need to keep full-time nurses, and U32 has never once been part of the discussions regarding the cuts. As the board knows, school nurses play an essential role in ensuring the overall well-being of our students, both physically and mentally, and our absence would significantly impact the quality of care and education students receive. Firstly, mental health concerns will no longer be adequately addressed within the health office if the nursing staff is reduced. Many students rely on school nurses to assess and provide support for mental health issues, and without sufficient resources from nursing and also the reduced school counselors, these concerns may be unaddressed or be left for extended periods of time. This is especially problematic as mental health challenges among students have only increased, and school nurses are often the first line of defense in recognizing and providing necessary assistance. Without our involvement, we risk neglecting or critical aspect of student well-being. Additionally, with reduced school nursing, care coordination will likely fall through the cracks. The time and attention necessary to ensure that students receive the appropriate care and follow-up will be compromised, making it harder to track individual health plans, 504s, IEPs, and provide the support each student needs. This can lead to delays and miscommunication, putting student health at risk. Tracking reportable disease, such as communicable illnesses, will also be more difficult without sufficient nursing support. We're critical in identifying and managing such illnesses, and without our involvement, it may be hard for the district to respond to outbreaks effectively and in a timely manner. Health data is crucial for tracking trends and ensuring that our district meets necessary health standards, and without sufficient nursing staff, this work may be sidelined. As a result, our school district may struggle to stay in compliance with necessary health regulations. For example, COVID-19 cases are still something we report, and most recently, U32 had several cases of pertussis and pneumonia that required state reporting. Another area that will suffer is community collaboration. We are very regularly meeting with CVMC and substance use counselors and trying to make outside resources accessible to students. Vision and hearing screenings, which are all vital for identifying potential learning barriers in students, will become extremely hard to manage with only one nurse, 1.4 nurses. In addition, the logistical challenge of covering the health office when a nurse is absent. What if I was absent today? Today we only had one nurse. I don't know what would have happened. The district's current state of nurse substitutes is very grim. Like, we have no substitutes. On average, U32 nurses see about 34 students a day. If the full-time nurse was out, what would happen with these students? Students who rely on daily medication will also face extended wait times as the school nurse's workload increases. Currently, administering medication is an efficient and critical service that is made possible by us. However, with fewer nurses, how are we supposed to manage that? Finally, many students rely on school nurses to assess health concerns before visiting a primary care provider. With a shortage of local pediatric providers, such as the reduction of providers at CVMC Pediatric Office, the closure of UVMC Primary Care in Berlin, and the upcoming mergers of family medicine practices, the wait time to see a provider has already increased significantly. By reducing the nursing staff at school, we create even more barriers for our students who may need to see their PCP. I shared some data with the board that I won't bother you with, but if anyone would like to see it, you can email me. I'd love to share it. But we do have 23 students at U32 with life-threatening illnesses and 86 students with active asthma. With this knowledge of our volume of visits to the health office, the complexity of health issues, I hope that you can see the value in keeping 2 full-time nurses at U32. An administrative assistant cannot assist nurses in assessing these students. In light of these considerations, I urge the school board to carefully evaluate the impact of reducing nursing staff in our district, especially when our medical community is already struggling. School nurses are indispensable to the health and success of our students, and cutting our roles will have serious consequences that affect not only students' well-being, but also the functionality of our school.
Thank you. Thank you, Amber. We did respond to your letter, but I'm going to open it up for Stephen or Becca to however you guys want to cover this.
I would start by saying that we realize that we are asking for the same cut that we have asked for in the past 2 years around our school nursing. And the board has chosen in the last 2 years to reinstate that. We continue to see a decline in our enrollment within all of our schools, and the level of service that we provide is beyond the need of our students at this point in time. And so I realize that it's a difficult change to think about. It's always balanced against what ifs and what might happen. But we do feel like the level of nursing service that we are proposing will meet the needs of the students that are in each of the schools. It's a very hard balance. I understand that. And I know that the principals have wrestled with, when I don't have a school nurse there every day, what's the structures in place in my school to be able to accommodate those needs? One of the things that we are definitely working on is what does it look like for them to be able to consult with somebody a nurse in another building so that we have coverage for those kinds of questions. We are going to explore some of the telehealth aspects of it so that we can put those in place. At this point in time, I cannot say that I have all of those in place for us because we are still trying to balance out what is the actual staffing that we're going to have. And I would say that we have difficulties in staffing the positions that we have right now. And so distributing our school nurses in ways that will be at each of the schools and they'll have services when needed. And then I would add on top of that, when there is a high level of need within a school. So we have a couple of schools that do have a higher level of need based upon the students that are there. We have recommended in those schools full-time nursing so that we cover those needs. If something were to change in one of our schools that has part-time nursing right now, in which we had a student who had that level of need, we would be asking the board for full-time nursing within that case. So we're not trying to cut just to cut. We're trying to be responsible, meet the needs of our students, and at the same time, where we have a high level of need, place services there for them. The reality of U32 right now is that it was, at one point in time, U32 had almost 1,000 students and one school nurse. We had, early in my time at U32, we had some students with significant health issues, and we asked for 2 school nurses to be placed at the school at that time because of those needs. Those needs have changed over time. The number of students has reduced over time, and therefore the recommendation is for 1.4 school nursing to be able to meet the needs of our students there. There's another conversation that I think we do need to have, and that could be through us talking about community schools and some of that work and configuration, is that if we want our schools to be health centers as well as a school with a school nurse, then that's a different proposal, and that's a different budgeting scenario, and that's a different structure. And I think sometimes we get caught between those two things. And so I just want to say is that we feel like we've been responsible in what we're proposing. We also feel like that if we need to have a bigger conversation about healthcare centers, that may be a discussion with our towns and with large organizations like CVMC, or we look at it through community schools. Because right now, we are not health centers, and that's not what we've been staffing for. If we want that kind of level, we need to talk about that in a different structure. Thank you.
Can I just make one more comment that I hope in the future, if with just allowing nursing to have a say or not a say, but a voice in these decisions would go a long way. This felt kind of like a blind side, I would say. So just asking for our input would be really wonderful.
Noted. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you, Amber. Arlen?
Hi, I didn't prepare anything to say this evening because I have a letter that I'm working on to share with the board, but I wanted to give a little clarification around the question Honey was asking. And I had trouble with my audio. I switched devices, so if there was a question from Honey posted in the chat, I didn't see it. But Honey had reached out to me to ask me some questions about how the position at East Montpelier is structured. So I just want to give a little background for the board, which I explained better in my letter. But just to be clear about what I believe is being lost for our kids. When I was hired at East Montpelier and we were a separate district, that was 15 years ago, a change was made to make the position a partial librarian position and a partial technology integration position. It required 2 endorsements for that hire, who happened to be me, that I needed to get and maintain. It is not one position. To consider it a library/tech integration is false. It is 2 jobs that require 2 endorsements from the state of Vermont. Berlin had a librarian and technology integrationist. Hallis Elementary has now had 2 librarian and technology integrationists. And then Rumney had another staff member who was a technology integrationist and did some of that work. I believe he was a math teacher and technology integrationist. And now I'm the only person that is a technology integrationist in our elementary schools, to my knowledge. I don't think there is anyone else. In the letter, I really explained some of what a technology integrationist provides for students and for staff. And I also just want to mention that you have a system where when it was felt that this was necessary to improve technology, effective use of technology in schools and support technology in our schools, we had 24 5-year-old Dell laptops for an entire school. That was bigger than it is now, but now we have exponentially more student one-to-one devices and student technology needs, as well as needs on the part of your staff to really effectively use technology and support technology with our kids, which is one way that our kids have opportunities to express themselves, to explore, to learn how to be responsible digital citizens, to be able to tell fact from fiction in an increasingly online world. AI is not making that easier. I believe we have more needs in our schools, even if our population is declining. And I'm concerned that not only have we really damaged our libraries by losing the staff that we've had, and I believe that is a direct response to the cuts that were made. I know that is definitely why at least one of our librarians sought other employment, because she was going to be in 3 schools. It's just going to make it hard to attract and retain qualified staff, especially staff that you might want to have ask to have both endorsements, because that used to be the case in many of our schools, and now that's just sort of slipped away. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned that it means that the kids in our schools don't have the same opportunities that they had a few years ago. And I don't think it's really been discussed. I think it's just sort of happened. And so I wanted to raise that for you all. And I have a letter that I've sort of explained a little bit of the history of that, because I don't imagine that everyone understands what a school librarian does or what a technology integration specialist does, just like I don't understand the nuances of your jobs. But I do appreciate that you are in a very difficult position. I don't envy the work that you are having to do. I just want to make sure that you're really clear on what's being cut and what's being lost. And I know there will be cuts that will be made, and something will be lost. And as long as we're honest that we're losing something, I think it's better. I think it's really hard to sort of have the message be, we're making these cuts, but it's not going to impact kids, and if there's not going to be any loss, because I just don't believe that's true. And I want to help the board just know a little bit more about what this kind of work does. And I can really only speak about library and technology because that's my area of expertise. But I also do believe that the reduction in staff impacts other programs as well. I mean, I see our amazing art teacher in 4 schools, and I just know that there's a difference. There's a difference in the kinds of relationships that you can have and the kinds of work you can do that are laid out in our core beliefs. I don't know how you can do several of our goals talk about SEL and nurturing communities and being these safe spaces and relationships. And I just don't know how you do that when you put your staff in 4 schools. So I just want to ask you to be mindful of that as you deliberate and make these hard decisions. And I do have a letter that I had meant to get to you before this meeting. It's just about done. I will get it to you tomorrow with a little more of this background. And I think it will address a little bit about what I think Connie was also asking. So thank you. I know there wasn't a question. It was just a little more information.
Thank you, Arlen. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Arlen. We really appreciate it. Let me see. I see Mr. Noah. Do you have a question?
I do. It's a little off of the budget, but so it might be more directed at Floor. But last time Chris had brought up the question of board members on the configuration committee and which board members would necessarily be assigned to the configuration committee. And I just wanted to see when that was going to be decided, and also just to reiterate my encouragement to consider on that committee that there be board members with a diversity of perspectives. That, I have a bit of concern that if the board members that end up on the configuration committee end up with sort of basically the same ideas that they had this past year, that there might not be room for a lot of different experimentation or different sort of challenging of perspectives. And so just as you guys do go into this process of deciding who is going to be on the configuration committee, both in terms of community members, but also in terms of board members, both an encouragement for a diversity of perspectives to be represented, and also just an open mind with whoever is on that board to sort of see if there's a possibility of looking at bigger and broader ideas, so that it's not just, okay, we're going to try to present the same idea again and hope that that something is different. So I guess that's sort of both a question and a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. We are going to talk about configuration later. I'm happy to answer. I don't know if you saw the post that we put on, Ursula put it on Front Porch Forum for Middlesex, and it's sort of, as what we were trying to avoid is exactly that, to have a bias. So we're trying to structure it so that we can have a rubric, so that when we appoint community members, we're going to decide the community members, and the appointment is all going to happen on the 18th. We were not planning to appointing today as board learning. And I would have said that we're not planning on appointing. I did take out, with the feedback from the board, I just put in 5 board members in bold. I don't know if you saw it. So I took the feedback from the board on that. So we're appointing 5 board members, 5 community members, and 3 administrators that are already decided. If you have a budget question, this is your time, because this is for budget. So give you the opportunity also to ask that budget question. But nevertheless, configuration, as we just heard the comments from Arlen right now, is configuration is directly linked of how we are able to serve our students right now, and our staff.
Yeah, and I guess the budget question, maybe this question was already answered in the link that Stephen posted that I haven't looked at yet. But I was just curious, budget-wise, where that I was very impressed by how the budget basically reflects inflation, except for the amount that was used from the reserve fund last year. And I was just trying to figure out, at the presentation 2 weeks ago, it seemed like by and large most of the services that related to students were being maintained. And so I was just trying to figure out where exactly the biggest cuts are coming from. And maybe that's already put in the new Google document that I haven't seen yet. But I was just curious sort of where the savings is coming from, because it didn't actually look to me that like there were huge FTE cuts.
I would say that at any individual school, there weren't huge cuts, but you can see in the centralized services in U32, there are several cuts that show there. That's the document that I shared with the community and in the chat, and the board has the letter that was sent out.
It's in the chat.
I would add too that I know that each individual building went through their non-salary and benefits and made significant cuts to those areas. That's an area where a lot of the money that came from in my building.
Can you explain that more, Susan?
Things like supplies and I don't know, there's a whole bunch of services and I don't know. I can't see them all. Field trips and things like that, like just lots of shaving and cutting. So there's very little fluff, and sort of my discussion with my staff was like, when you come and say, can I please order this? My answer is probably going to be no next year. Whereas this year, there's a little bit more breathing room where I can be like, oh, yeah, we can make that happen. So I think that it's like tightening up in all of those other areas.
Yeah, and I would say that in our capital funds, we cut back in the amount of money that we put towards capital. Within our IT budget, we were able to reduce some of the software expenses that we had. So we found savings in other areas as well, and we've cut back as much as we can to try to preserve those student programs as much as possible. Excuse me.
Thanks. Thank you, Noah. Okay, I don't see any more hands. So, Merkel. So we are, thank you everybody for being here, because we do have a lot of people online. So seeing that we don't have any more questions, we're going to move into board learning. Let's take a 5-minute break. So let's do a 10-minute break because we're doing good. Does that sounds good? Give you a chance to go to the bathroom
Please
and
eat
get
more
your.
food. There's so much food
Okay,
here.
yeah, get your book. Members of the public, we're going to take a 10-minute break.
Are
Can we be
unmuted?
live? Can we be live? Okay. We are live, and we are going to move right into board learning and improving school board effectiveness. I hope that you guys all had a chance to read the chapter. Show of hands, honestly, you did. Tell me yes. All right. But I send a little, I'm just pulling out my, I pulled out my book.
You don't have to move it.
What I thought is we would start with, Post-its, that's where I could see it. As I was saying, oops, that's me, sorry. I'm moving this thing. I'm not very good at this mic thing. The balanced governance approach introduces the concept of balanced governance. I try to summarize it a little bit in the memo. It emphasizes the importance of being both strategic and collaborative in our work, which we were talking about it, and staff was talking about it too. This means setting clear goals, supporting educational leaders at every level, and remaining flexible as we address changing priorities. So in chapter 1, I put some examples of questions that we could do. We don't need to do the 7 or 5 sections that I put here. I wanted us to sort of a time to reflect of when you read, if there was something that you particularly wanted to highlight to us. But I did want to spend a little time in roles and responsibilities because of where we're headed as we started listening to community input and things to make sure that we stay laser focused on our 30,000 feet level, that we're not managing the operations of the schools. So we could do, how well do we as a board understand and respect the boundaries between governance and, I said management, but governance and operations could be? Or are there any areas where we tend to overstep? Or if so, how can we improve? No. I just want us to be reflective, right? So not everybody needs to answer the question, but if you have something to share in that area, Daniel.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of the examples that occurred to me happen at a committee level where there's both collaboration and also sort of a mutual respect between district leadership and the board, and we understand our role to be that of a monitor and that of a setter of policy as opposed to a manager and an entity that sets procedure. And that seems to be like a clear distinction and one that we honor pretty faithfully, I would say.
Thank you, Danny.
I'm thinking specifically of the Ed Quality Committee and the work we do to monitor and understand the work of our curriculum director and our superintendent and our teachers. And also, I have never attended a policy committee meeting, but I admire them from afar, and we get to hear what they bring to the board, and that's something that I really appreciate, especially when the distinction between policy and procedure is clear and how policy extends through to procedure, and procedure honors policy in turn.
Any other, Zach?
I think one thing I sort of maybe struggle a little bit with is when it talked about the role of the board and requesting data and looking at data as holding the administration accountable. as someone who's not an education professional, it's sort of hard to figure out, okay, so what is the right goal? What is sort of the right level that is both realistic, but also setting the bar high enough that we're going to make progress. And I don't know sort of really where that falls. And so I think that was a thing of reading that, I was sort of thinking, oh, that looking at data is sort of the local religion these days. But it's like sort of knowing what does that mean in practice, I think is a lot harder.
Kelly and then Elizabeth.
Maybe to build on that, because actually, as I was reading this, the questions that I wrote down were like, we know where we are, but I'm not sure where we should be or how we're going to get there and what's kind of the expectation. But I thought that Celia's presentation and the data at the school level actually really gave me what I needed to understand what needs to happen here in a way that I have trouble getting to when we see it district-wide. Like, we see the graphs, and then I'm like, is that good? And so sometimes I get a little bit stuck on those. But I think if we can go school to school and see these, then we have a better idea of what's needed at each school and therefore across the district. And it's just a much easier way to look at data, since our schools are different schools with different staffing needs and different, and children have different needs at them as well. So.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I would just say that I really enjoyed reading this chapter. I thought it was helpful as somebody who's new as a board member. A couple things that stand out for me as I move through each of these board meetings and really grapple with understanding the role of the board and then myself as a learner, because I'm an administrator in early education, but in education. And one of my learning styles is to gather information and to get curious. And my balance is to make sure that when I'm getting curious and I'm seeking information, it doesn't come across as if I'm making it sound like I don't trust the administrator or that I don't believe in their expertise, because really that's not what it is, because we have a highly skilled group of leadership and administrators. It's more for me to understand, how do I support you as an administrator in these really challenging times when budget is a constraint, when money is a constraint, and also to ask those questions of curiosity to be able to deepen my understanding of why are we doing what we're doing? Because that's really important as a board member, I think. Not the what we do necessarily, but why are we doing what we're doing? And I think when I think about how we learn things, kind of to what you were saying, Keely, the understanding of, like, you've got that higher level understanding, but that closer level understanding is sometimes much more palpable for me. And then I can say, okay, that makes a lot of sense why we're doing it across the schools, or that makes a lot of sense why we're making this budget decision. And so being able to ask those questions, but also make sure that our administrators know that I trust their process, I trust what they're saying, and I might have questions, and I might want you to dig a little deeper so I can have a deeper understanding of where we're going and what the overarching goal is.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
So I think if there's no other input, or you were going to say something, or something? Go ahead.
I don't know if I want to say what I want to say. I think we have a lot of room to grow as a board. I think that there are times that we have second-guessed what our administrators have brought to us as what they needed, and we have told them what we want them to do. And we have made changes through the budgetary process in places that would be their realm to make decisions. And whether that came from us not understanding a why or from some other way, I think that it's a place that we need to monitor ourselves when we decide to play with the numbers that they give us for whatever reasons we all personally have. Is that we need to look to these administrators that we have hired, right? We hire the superintendent, they make sure that their staff is the best. And are looking at their students and the students' needs, and they come to us with a proposal, and then when we go, well, but actually, let's change all of these things, without us really being in that system to know how it affects the overall system, or how it will trickle down and affect the students.
Can I add to that? I think it is our role to understand that. I don't think it's our role to necessarily say, change it because I think this certain thing, but I do think it's really important to understand. I really, really think that's important, and I say that because, you know, in my own profession, in the world that I work in, I value brain power, right? And I think that that's a big part of the leadership team, is that brain power and that really thinking through things. And because we as a board can't necessarily be a part of that and don't necessarily need to be a part of it, that's fine. And I think it's really important to be able to say, tell me more about why that is. Because then I can back that up and say, absolutely, that makes complete sense. We're all on the same page and we understand. And I know that we can't get down to the nitty-gritty, even though I love getting down to the nitty-gritty. And I agree that we have areas of growth. And I still think that it's okay to say, tell me more. I want to understand, because I think that is how there was something that it said, that we are responsible for creating conditions for maximal learning. And that's kind of how we do it, by asking when something isn't clear, or asking when something doesn't make sense, not to question the decision, but just to say, I'm not sure why, and I want to learn why. And when you tell me why, I will believe you because you're the expert, right? So that's the part that I think I will continuously monitor myself on. But I do think you're right, that we do have to be very aware of that and make it clear when we are asking those questions that it's not a judgment of decision, but rather a question of clarification.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, you guys all bring good points. I'm going to move us to page 19, the page after page 19, there's the table, because I think it talks about all of the things that you guys are bringing up right now, the key actions of the board using sort of this balanced governance approach. And I'm not going to concentrate on the no, do, I want to go all the way down to believe, because I think that one thing that is, the beliefs is down below. So table 1.1, and the belief, so it says no, do, believe in each of the key. So in this first one, the key area of the board act, developing awareness of student learning needs and building commitment to systematically address the needs. Are you in that table?
Yes.
And then all the way down, it's on beliefs. And why part of, because we don't have endless time, but why I'm going down to beliefs is that I feel that sometimes, and a lot of times, because we're all humans, you know, we just as the community sometimes is easier, not easier, but it feels more meaningful to make a decision in a belief rather than just necessarily just data. Because, you know, for something to be kind of right, you have to put, I always say this, head and brain together makes a good decision, right? Like you, when both come, Martin Luther King used to say that, like, you know, when you bring them both together, then you know that.
Right.
And our beliefs, you know, our beliefs, our values have a lot to influence in our decisions. So, but I think we could all agree that, you know, the current level of student achievement is not what we can expect, and we can expect much more, right? We just heard from Celia, right? Don't we all want more? Can we all believe on that?
Yeah, I would just point out too, Celia made a really good statement within her presentation, is improving the quality, it's the third bullet there.
Yeah.
Improving the quality of teaching is the most important strategy for improving student learning. I think, like, to draw the through line from that, if that is our belief, and we've called that a theory of action in the past in our district, but if that's our belief, then that professional development plan that's a part of my my evaluation and that's a part of our strategic plan, that's a really important thing for the board and administration and faculty and staff to have a conversation about. Like, what does that look like? What are the resources that we put to it? What are the amounts of time that we put towards it? How do we buy time? How do we find time? You know, how do we create it if we could? But like that's kind of that through line for that. So if that's something that we believe, like there's some real tangible things that we can do and talk about. And those are the important things to me as a superintendent. Like if we're having that conversation and you're asking me those questions, then I feel like I'm doing my job in informing you as a board as to what we need as a district.
And if we concentrate in this, and I'm not trying to tell you what to think, I'm just pointing at the information and you can decide what to think. But when I read those 5 bullet points also, I feel like they would also help us align our future conversations and configuration, right? Because that is not, all agreeing that improving the quality of teaching is the most important strategy. It doesn't end with our work here in the budget. It informs our configuration conversations, whether we want it or not, right? Yeah.
Patrick.
Oh, go ahead, Patrick.
This is, can I just say also though, it's not there are prerequisites to that bullet, right? So there are prerequisites to being able to be in a position where you can learn. You have to have a full belly and have a sense of belonging, right? You have to go through the Maslow's hierarchy first. And so while I agree with that point that if you by increasing what the teachers, by improving what the teachers are doing, improves what the students can achieve, there's still more to it, right? And I think that our role is to remind each other and remind the administration that there's other stuff to do also. There's pieces of educating kids in public school that might be missing from the budget, and we need to raise our hand and remind each other and the administration that might be the case.
Yeah, and I think that you're correct in what you're saying, and I would add to that if the teacher has had the professional development that he or she or they need, they will also know that I'm just thinking about the professional development that you're planning right now in the Justice Coalition. They would have some resources to address any economic disparities, because they would have the tools that they need to meet the child at the level. I'm going to say that because I don't know these terms, like to meet them where they are, but also ask from administration so the administration can pass it on to the bigger, all the layers, so that it also gets to us.
I think what I would say to that is from where I stand is that that's where we started, right? Like I entered this building and we looked at like, what do kids need? Like they need adults that greet them every morning. They need food, so we buy snacks, right? We have cupboards of snacks that we have kids that access them every day, and we are working really hard in every one of our buildings to just ask simple questions of kids. Like I had a student the other day that just said to me, "I need to sleep," and I was like, "Great, let's go do that. like let's go do that. Let's go find the place to do that. Where are the places in our building where you can do that?" So I think each one of us, when we are thinking about building budgets as well, like that will always, to my core, be what I will always say that. Like you need food and you need to feel safe and you need to belong. And I think that as an administrative team, I think we believe that really, really firmly.
Yeah, and I believe you believe it too.
Yeah.
I want it to be.
Absolutely.
I want the district to show that in the budget.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Like highlight where that is.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
And what I'm trying to get at or get us at is to a point where we have some agreed upon beliefs or agreed upon facts that we all stand by. Like, because we were doing this when we were creating the table for the configuration, that plan, that little table that you guys got from Daniel, Ursula, and myself, right? So there's some agreed upon information that we all have to agreed on. And the way that this, four tables are aligned also will help us when the standards come up in July 2025. So we could move down to, applying pressure and accountability, or the next one, like that consistency, a part demonstrating commitment, where it said in order for students' learning to improve, schools must be organized and structured differently. Schools cannot continue to do what they have always done and expect different results. There's different things. I'm not saying we need to adopt these tables, but just for us to, I'm not expecting tonight to have all of that for us. I just wanted you to brainstorm. So what does balanced governance means to us? Are we doing enough monitoring with our quality, right?
And we ask good questions, at least I think so. I mean, Jen can correct me, but sometimes we ask a lot of questions too. Just recently we asked several questions and had them come back with more information. And it is, what do we need to do to improve? What are our goals as the board, right? What do we need to watch for so that they can do their work? So those are some of the goals. I was also gonna say, in this table where they have the beliefs, if you go to the next one, providing support for ongoing professional learning, which was literally one of the first beliefs that we had touched on, it talks about, in order to change outcomes for students, we must continually invest in building the capacity of our educators. But the last one is student achievement barriers such as poverty, lack of family support can be overcome by the most effective instructional practices, which I think touches on some of the things Patrick was pointing out. We have to have capacity as a structure to do that.
So I think one thing in that table, in that part where you went, that when I was reading that I think we can do a little better too is, we are providing the financial support that we think that is good. What we are not doing so well all the time is celebrating success, and learning from the success. We don't, we just don't do enough of that. Today was awesome, we got to see what math is, and then we need to provide spaces where we can celebrate some things that we're doing well, so that the community also knows. And then when we go out, we can talk about not just the things that are stressing us out right now, right? But the other things that we're doing well, and we learned some of those things today. But I don't know if there's I don't intend to have a monologue with you guys. It's supposed to be a conversation.
I really appreciate from this chapter the articulation of the distal conditions and the proximal conditions and our role to support the achievement of the students as the priority. And I the part about school board members, on page 19, the last sentence, school board members can enhance their leadership role in the school renewal process without digressing into micromanaging the system. I think that's one of the biggest challenges, because we do have diverse opinions. We have our own morals and values that we bring to the table. And I think that sort of the focus of this chapter, referencing the research from the Lighthouse studies, emphasizing the importance in our role to support the leadership to create, procedures so that they can do their job, and also I think what's important contextually to remember, to constantly remind ourselves, is that we're not against each other, in the community, or us versus administration. We're all doing our best in this kind of meta crisis in the United States where education is not prioritized like it should be. So we're just really constricted. That's sort of stating the obvious here, but we can sort of digress in our own thinking when we cling to our morals and our optimism too, of how things could be better if some administration could do more, how you reallocate the cutting of the FTE in a different way, and that'll solve it. Could actually we are, we're in this together and just appreciating each other. So when you kind of summarizing like the focus of being strategic and collaborative, is a helpful kind of like reframe for us all.
In one of the pieces on page, I was thinking, because I had it underlined it before that we've read this book a few times, but the balanced governance approach would support a response to a community member, and it talks, like today we learned, let me describe when a community member is asking us a question, right, and understanding, learning, right, like let me describe what we're currently doing to improve our math scores, right, like, like today we all learn, and you have some specific information, this is why we are supporting, iReady, or, why this is why multi-layer system support is important, or this is why our teachers, need to meet 80% of their student needs, whatever, like we can all, sort of help with that, but that also keeps us, that is a balance governance approach, right? It's informed oversight. We're making a decision with information that is not just, obviously makes us feel good, so it's still that part of the heart, but it is not, we're not making a split decision in, like, somebody comes up and says, my own personal story is not that, or whatever. We're making the decision and a holistic decision.
Yeah, and I think that really helps me frame, like, to Patrick and to Elizabeth, what you're asking about, like, you just want to be able to articulate to the community, like, I know those needs of our students are being met because, right? And therefore, that's taken care of. Let's talk about that next conversation, right? And so I was making some notes, like, what does that look like? That's part of that COLT report. That's part of the, like, here's how we meet those needs. And thinking about what's the information that we as an administration share with you as the board so that you have that level of ability to say the elevator speech on it, right? Because you're not going to go into all the details. I don't want to know all the details, as I'm sure what most of you are thinking, but I need enough to know that I can answer the question.
Right.
And I think that's important as we develop that, what does, it's the goal 3, transparent and responsible leadership.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's
And that's
good.
when they give us the call reports or the principal reports, we're like, okay, we might not have many questions, but let's highlight, A, B, and C, and, so that you have something on the website, or, that we all have that. Ursula?
I was going to say, when I first joined the board, we used to talk as the board, and of course it's changed quite a bit since I joined, but we talked about being able to answer that elevator speech, being able to answer where our students are now, how they're doing, and what we're doing to move forward, right? And being able to answer sort of those 3 things. And that is that elevator speech, and it's knowing our story and what we're doing and where we're going and what changes are we making, right? Like, we talk in ed quality a lot, and I might be partial about that group, but we talk in ed quality a lot about where we are, what challenges do we have, and what are we doing to address those challenges. And so we may not be where we want to be yet, but we know where we're trying to get to.
Another question I would ask, I really like those questions, Ursula. Another question I would ask is, what systems are we putting in place in our schools? Because there's some really great things happening, but I don't think we always know what those systems are. So, like, when you have a staffing shortage, how do you pivot? What does that look like? How do you know that your pivot is successful, right? I mean, all of that is really, really important, because when we talk about professional learning, you can't do professional learning if you're having to do 5 other things, right? And so I think one of the things that our administrators are really good at is balancing that out. I think they do a great job at that. I see that in a lot of the amazing things that are happening in the schools. But I think for me, systems is really important. What do we do? How do we respond to those things? And so as a board member, I would like to be able to say, yeah, we are having a staffing shortage, but here's some of the systems that we're putting into place. Here's some of the strategies we're using that are working really well for our kids. That to me is really powerful. And to your point, I want not just to be able to do an elevator, speech, but I want to be able to be a cheerleader for our district. It's one of the reasons I wanted to be on the board, because I really do believe we're doing good things. And in order to do that, I have to be able to articulate it in that way. So I appreciate those questions, and I will think about them a lot.
Daniel.
Just to piggyback on that, one thought I had that I heard us talking about a lot when I joined the board was just sort of this principle that by paying attention, and this really comes back to the whole concept of cheerleading, by paying, really strict attention to the work of the school district, we give it energy, and we bring the community to the school district, and we bring the community's energy to that work, and it has this multiplicative effect. And that's something I took to heart when I joined. So.
Yeah.
Jen and I just heard the term for that the other day. It's the positive contagion effect. So go for it.
Be a witness to the good, right, Jen? Be a witness to the good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the last table is that, we haven't done enough board learning in this past year and a half because we had concentrated in doing the core beliefs and our strategic plan, hoping that we are all getting really well informed and understand what our strategic plan is. And that last part is, the community must be a partner with school district in order for the school to improve learning for all students. I think we all believe that. And, we're not always successful at bringing the community, keep, working on that. But I think what this highlights for me, at least, is that I think we need to do more learning to get, we can get back in the, we used to read a couple of books, we can just get back into that. So, when we read this book for the first time and Phil was coming to our meeting, we did it for like every beginning of the meeting for, and it was a chunk. It was just almost 6 months that we committed that time as a board to learn. I'm not sure we need to do it in a different day because we all have busy lives. But like if we can balance learning at the beginning of that first Wednesday of the month and really understand, so we can have that elevator speech. How are the students how are the students doing? That's huge for communities. What can we highlight that's success? So we can commit to that. There's no reason why you can't keep reading on your own.
It's a whole book club.
There's a whole book club, and then we can move on until the next one, which I just bought for Ursula and myself and for Steven.
It's coming now.
There's more.
Look at her, it's like a Mary Poppins bag.
But like governance is so important, and we're gonna. My hope is to align the book that you have right now with the governance standards that we're gonna have to apply starting July 1st. And I think we have set systems. Like if you read through that entire table, I think we're doing a lot of things that are there, and we just, in my mind, we need to get better at doing that at the last minute, taking an informed decision, not just by pressure. And I say that respectfully. I know that there's some board members that are online, and you guys haven't raised your hand, but I've been looking to see if you raise your hand, so that we can continue to move our system to more, to have high achievement, equity, and sustainability, because we owe it to our students, right? And to our teachers too. In order to retain our teachers, we need to create those conditions where jobs are attractive and they can be a full self in a job. So, well, thank you for taking the time. I'm not gonna try to get everybody to talk, but we're gonna move into an update. I think I don't have my agenda on configuration.
Yep.
We included the draft table that you guys had seen already, and that was mostly so that the other community members could see it. It should be there in your packet on page 35. And then because the letter that we posted was not ready, but we posted it on Tuesday, the too many names. Steering committee posted the letter, and that letter just outlines basically 6 areas too, so that it would allow us to have until the 16th, open to get, we already received 3 letters, I think, for 3 letters of, from different people. The steering committee is going to post again today. I said to them 3 or 4 times before the 16th. So that period is open until the 16th, at the end of the day of the 16th, so that the 17th we can send them up to all board members. And the 18th, we would have a discussion as a board on how to, not how to appoint committee members with, and have a little rubric with criteria around those 6 areas: availability, connection to the district, community engagement, equity and inclusion, and there's challenges and opportunities, commitment to student achievement and well-being. There are some questions there for people to answer in order to apply. You saw all the documents. Are there any questions? Yes.
Just really quick, has it been posted on all Front Porch Forums or just Middlesex, or?
All Front Porch Forums.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All Front Porch Forums.
Okay. We won't say anything about that, but we'll get it up.
I
haven't done it yet.
I checked with you. You were the first one that I checked in with.
It's not. I'm taking
We did put him under the I will say that when I post, I also click the little box that allows it to be posted to all of the neighborhoods nearby, so that
It shows
they
up
can
in-
see it twice.
It shows up in the bottom.
Yeah, it does show up in the bottom, so maybe people can see it twice.
Yeah, it does.
And then, you know.
Yeah, it should be posted again.
I'm wondering if we should
I posted
have
it, I saw
a,
Yes.
date. I'm concerned that we're not gonna get applications from all the towns.
We are.
Do we already have them?
We have,
We're
we
we've
have
gotten to 3 different towns
3
already.
towns already.
Have you got one from
That's
Yes.
exciting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Never mind, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think because we need to start the work.
I was just gonna
everything
say
to
that
start
if
the
we
work in
didn't,
December.
we should have like a
No,
date
if we
beforehand that we
didn't-
could like
yeah,
drum
if we,
up,
if we
whatever.
didn't, yeah, and I would, you know, that's why I think we need to post several times, but we already got applications from the towns that I thought we wouldn't get applications. So at least there's one person.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay, good.
Yeah, okay. Are there any questions on,
No,
did I forget about any changes? Daniel, I did check in with you.
I love this document you created requesting letters of interest.
Yeah,
think
and I
it's really
used some of the
comprehensive.
questions that you had sent me, and I just added
Vastly
some.
improved. There's no resemblance.
Don't undercut yourself.
I think I considered the document that you had was like a working, let's all share our comments and thoughts.
And then Flora gave us guidance that it probably, we didn't want to pursue that because of open meeting.
Oh, well, yeah, so we can, you know, when we are posting for updates for our, or we're talking about an agenda, but a board can have, you know, I can have a conversation with you back and forth, but a board can be working on a document, not in open meeting, so yeah, so that's what I was, you guys gave some guidance at the last meeting, and then Ursula gave me some guidance, and then I talked to you directly, so I created a separate document, because I didn't want a document there for, that was not, yeah. So for new board members, you know, open meeting law prohibits us to work in Google Docs. It's not, you know, administrators can work on their Google Docs. We as a board can be like making decisions in a Google Doc and changing, unless it's for a posting, an update for an agenda, or an update from after a board meeting, or changing. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
And maybe I missed it, so my apologies. For board members that are interested in being on the committee, are they sharing interest? How is that piece happening? I'm not volunteering myself, I'm just asking the question.
I was thinking that we would just do it that day. and,
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
was not.
Just nominate.
Yeah, just nominate people to the, to the configuration committee. Yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna try to, I have set aside 2 hours tomorrow to like try to like have more of that rubric and a plan So like, not in advance of the committee, but sort of like, we have a timeline, so
Yes.
like sort of working backwards on that timeline, using some of the information, not to do the same plan, but, we have some dates by when it would be meaningful, so that we can work with that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
not doing the work of the configuration committee, just doing a little backwards planning, so we know that we can fulfill our duties as a board.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I hadn't missed something that had already been stated or shared.
No, I didn't put that because we already had the 3 administrators. We had some people that were, some board members that were already participating in the configuration committee that I'm not assuming it's the same people, but.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
So if there's no other
Natasha
questions-
has her hand.
Oh, Natasha, go ahead, sorry. Oh, I see you now in my screen too.
Do we have any idea of what the meeting? I know that it makes sense to ask that sort of once we get community members, but I know that Michaela and Julia and I are talking about which of us will serve, and we can't make that decision until we know what the dates and times are of the meetings because of the nature of our schedules. So.
Yeah, we won't know, Natasha, because it would be when that configuration committee comes together, working on the schedule of that group of people. So I would hate to say, like, it's going to be, I guess we could say we're going to try to continue to meet the Wednesday before the board meeting, which is the 3rd Wednesday of the month, which is when the configuration committee was meeting before, at least to start the first meeting. But I can't. I think we would be not being respectful to other committee members to just sort of, or I guess because we didn't put that here saying that it was going to be Wednesday or it was going to be Tuesday.
Well, Flora, you did put in here that the first meeting is January 6th.
Well, I just say starting January
Yeah.
6th because it's, like I just figured not. That
no,
was
but
a Monday. Yeah.
I figure that's when you guys would then decide when that committee would decide when they're gonna hold their meetings, right?
Yes.
You've gotta
Right.
have one
Yeah.
to get everybody together and then make a decision of
And
when
then make
and
the
what
decision.
time.
Yeah.
Right.
Natasha, would
Okay,
it
I
work
mean,
for?
I understand that. I also just, I would think for community members also it'd be helpful to know, like, are we looking at early, because if I have kids or whatever, right, like deciding whether I want to throw my hat in the ring as a community member, having some kind of concept of the time of day that the meetings might be happening, or like so I know it can't be like finalized right now, but I think giving some sort of expected window with flexibility might be helpful for community members too, who are thinking about, applying to be on this.
Let's think about it. If you have some input on that, that'd be great. I hadn't. I'd be totally honest. I hadn't thought about it. So I hadn't thought about it because I was trying to make it more open to more people and not. But at the same time, I understand that it could be less open if it would conflict with their schedules. So,
Flor, would it be helpful to, when people are applying, for them to indicate what times would work for them? So for example, if it's somebody who can only do it in the morning, and we see that majority of the applicants can do it in the evening, do you know what I'm saying? Like, is there a way to kind of get a gauge of what that availability might look like? So when you're...
I can add...
Does that make sense?
Yeah, what I could do is add an availability, add a bullet, and
I
then
think
reach
so.
out
I
to
think that
the
might help.
3 people that have already sent a note with
Yeah.
their availability and just put some
I think that
options.
might help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Natasha. We'll do that. And thank you, Elizabeth. Any other input? Good? Okay. And now let's move into our approved minutes. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of November 20th?
So moved.
Thank you, Patrick. Second. Second by Kelly. Any amendments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I did. Healy.
Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. That's our consent agenda. I was supposed to check in with you, nothing, there's no personnel. Future agenda items, I was able to talk to a few of you, but not everybody, because it just happened. Thinking about moving our December 18th meeting to fully remote. For a couple of reasons, it's a little closer in the holidays. A lot of people mostly attend remote our meetings. It's really hard to do this through both ways, and we could move. It's a little bit easier to keep the meeting, have less interruptions, and then be able to move into a room for us to deliberate who the committee, who the appointee is going to be, without like creating it's just similar to when we have student. It's just a little more organized. I would prefer that we moved it remotely. I've talked to a few board members. I talked to all the Worcester board members, and they said yes. I just started. I just didn't have a chance to reach everybody today. So I talked to Ursula. I talked to the Worcester board members. Everybody said yes, but I hadn't talked to all of you guys.
Do we need to have a space that people can go in person? Also,
we'll have the space at central office
Central
designated.
office, just in case.
Yeah, we'll just agree not to go there ourselves.
We get to stay at home.
Yeah, you get, so the board would be fully remote, students would be fully remote. Well, yeah, Stephen might be at central office.
I'll be at central office.
But on your computer.
I'd love a good remote board meeting.
Depending on how annoying my children may be, I may show up at central office.
Camping out in the office.
Okay, and that's, we don't need action, we just need thumbs up, I don't need a motion, I just don't want to, yeah, great, thank you. Really appreciate it, all right.
So, agenda item suggestion, I thought we were going to hear from Jody tonight, is that?
We are having conflict.
Yeah, we had some conflicts with timing on it, so she's going to send the information, and then we're going to have her probably in January.
Okay.
Yeah, she was not able to attend, there were just conflicting meetings.
Many board meetings that she's trying to attend. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that was still on the.
It is. Jody and I have communicated.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I was also curious if we could have a meeting agenda item about the kind of to make a plan about lobbying the state in a way that we can get input from the whole board. So I don't know if that is a discussion at.
Loving the state, can you tell me more?
About how the state can help school districts and what we need from our representatives at the state to make our lives and our work easier. I know you're doing that, but it'd be great to have an opportunity for us to contribute to the thinking.
So we always invite our representatives for one of our meetings to come and join us for the first part of that meeting so we can have that conversation with them.
Great.
We have to get them into session before we usually can get them here, but I'll be reaching out to them to schedule them.
Yeah. We would schedule with Melissa. We typically do, not typically, we tried it last year and worked out good to have a breakfast with legislators, but we waited until February because otherwise, because it's hard right now to get there, just, they're getting their committed assignments, so not, I don't think they've elected a speaker yet. So, yeah, there's a lot going on right now, but we will definitely have a one-on-one with all of the Washington. And it was well attended. Every single one of them came, and we actually did it here in Berlin early, 7:30.
It was really constructive conversation too, which was nice.
That's really, I didn't know about that, so that's great. Is there work in front of that meeting that we can have to
for questions?
Yeah, like an agenda item to talk about sort of, all right, well, what's our going in plan? What do we think we want?
Priorities, yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yes. I know in the past when we have been one of many priorities, we sort of let it go a little bit longer because that's when they have time. I feel like this year, maybe doing it as soon as possible will get them here and will give us more time to say things that will then have an impact.
Yeah, so I think that's what I'm thinking, that February I don't know, you tell
The
me.
only,
I'm
the
thinking
only issue
January
with February
7th.
is that they're talking about taking action on some of this stuff right away.
Yeah.
So I feel like we should consider having it in January and even early January.
And I think that given what an incredibly hot topic education is, we could schedule this thing at 2 in the morning and they would show up. I'm not suggesting we do that, but.
I will
but-
not be here if it is at 2 a.m.
Okay, so we can work on that. I can tell you from experience, because we're trying to do breakfast with them right now, that they won't be available until the end of January. But just because we are also trying to do the same thing as the VSBA, we're
Tell them
actually trying
there'll
to
be
schedule
cameras there.
some. You what? But it might be easier to get just a smaller group. We have a much wider net, so we'll figure out
Thanks.
something, and we have all the context. Thank
I
you.
realize as a new school board member, we hadn't told you that we did that
That's
kind
right.
of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great
Or
idea.
learning.
It's a great idea, yeah.
We're learning, yeah. Okay, board reflection before we move into public comments. Okay, a lot of reflect. Oh, Kelly.
Oh, just that I saw your message, and maybe I missed this in the meeting that I wasn't at, but of all the open office hours at the different schools.
Yeah.
And that's so amazing. I read that and I was like, oh, amazing.
So I'm going to each of the schools. You may have seen it in your school newsletters.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that's where it was.
Yeah, and
the
that's
coffee
okay.
thing.
So what I was trying to do is make a round for the schools in the community to be able to come out and just whatever they want to talk about. It's usually budget, but whatever is fine. And then in the second round, as I started that, I was going to reach out to the board to see if the times, if there's anybody that wanted to join me as well, so that you could be a part of that. And just make that more, give you a little more advance notice so that you could join me at one of the schools when we do that, and publicize it as such, so that we can do that. So just part of that community outreach part, just pointing out like rubric items maybe. Right. But I think it is important, and I did want to include the board eventually as we start doing those to make it a more of a joint effort.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Stephen. Daniel?
I was just going to say something about, appreciating hearing from the community members who did speak. Also, some disappointment that we didn't have an opportunity to engage too much on the budget tonight ourselves. And one thing I was noticing is, and Keely, you brought this up also with your question, I think, to Celia, we give so much attention, and probably appropriately so, to the movement in FTEs in the budget. And I think there's also a lot of information in those, what are they called, in the budget presentation, school allocated resources, these different areas that are smaller pots of money but have important impacts. And like hearing about it's sort of like money is oxygen in a lot of ways in the curriculum council, and suddenly if that's a stipended position, sort of the energy changes completely. And just like a little thing like the addition of a stipend there has such an impact. And I've been thinking about field trips at elementary schools and like what kind of sort of educational enrichment field trips offer. I wish there were time and space to learn more about a lot of these different areas. I don't know how and when that fits into a very busy schedule, but that was one thought.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. Anything else? All right. Public comments. We still have a lot of public. Hope you guys can all hear us. It's hard when I don't see faces right now.
We can still hear you, just not many comments.
Okay, thank you, David. All right. Okay, I don't see any
Lila.
hands up. Oh, Lila, were you making an appearance? You sort of came in and then went away. Were you raising your hand?
I was trying to. My
Oh, there you are.
was not taking either the raised hand or the video. I just wanted to make a couple of brief comments about community engagement. And I even before you were talking about the having the community meetings and the meetings at the coffee hours at the school, I wanted to say I think that is a good development, a good idea, and we appreciate that, you know, you're making the effort to do that. I do think it would be good to maybe have some of these meetings where the school board members from the community could also be present, as Stephen was suggesting. I also think that moving to the format where you have a section for Q&A has been very helpful, makes people feel more more involved than the public comment periods have ever made us feel. It's been valuable to just be able to ask a question and get a response. So I hope that you continue to incorporate that into future meetings. And on the topic of future meetings, I would really encourage you not to call a meeting like this a community forum because it really was not a community forum. There was a section sort of in the middle where people who had been paying attention to the budget could ask questions, which, as I said, is a valuable, you know, piece of the meetings. But the rest of it was not involving the community. It had a very different feel than the meeting that you had at Doty last month, which really did engage the community. And I realized that, you know, not every month may be possible to have a meeting like that, but I would not call this a community forum and advertise it as such, because it really wasn't. It talked about, you know, board development and, you know, things that are important to you to discuss, but I really did not feel that it was a good community forum. So those are my thoughts about community engagement. Thanks.
Thank you, Lila. Deborah, I see you. I don't see your hand up, so I'm assuming you have a comment.
It wasn't going up, so I figured I'd just.
Okay, yes. Go ahead.
I have a question about the bus routes at Doty and thoughts for that moving forward. If I know that Stephen had at one point said he was going to be exploring that. I know Gillian was exploring that, and not necessarily for this year, but for next year, and what that might look like. I'd like you to consider that equity piece as well. Other schools that do have a more robust busing system have opportunities for their students. We're talking about library services being cut, opportunities for their students to be bused into Montpelier and being dropped off at Calais Hubbard, for example. So I just want to put that in the mix for the next conversation about the budget.
Thank you.
Okay.
Deborah Bloom. Yeah.
Fleur, one thing I think would be really helpful is if people said who they are and the town in which they're voting from. I think it's really important to know
we usually remind
where
them
they
of
are
that.
a
Yeah,
taxpayer from.
So that was Deborah Bloom, Lisa from Worcester.
From Worcester, yeah. I apologize. I'm terrible at that.
And work and I have education too. All right.
2 kids at Doty, so thank you.
And we have a document with Stephen and the questions that were not answered today, which actually was just one, is there, and we're trying to sort of what we said to you at our meeting, trying to keep track so that who's in charge and what the question for that would be.
Just one small housekeeping note. I noticed that the budget presentation is in our meeting resources, but it's not in the budget under the budget resources tab on the website.
I saw that as well.
Yeah.
That would be great to have it.
I need to move some. We need to move some things over to the budget resources. I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah, and Melissa talked about doing that today. And the one thing that I forgot to tell is she just emailed me, and there's about 17 responses. She would make them available. We're going to keep it open until the end of the week, like we said, and then we will all have access to the survey responses. I think
that's, I don't see any other hands up from community. And then just so that the board knows, we did not advertise this as completely as a community forum, just that section of the board, because we were not going to be able to have draft 2 of the budget. So, apologies on that, but we, in our to-do list, that was our hope, but we were not going to be able to have draft 2. So we just made some time for still having a Q&A. Okay. With that, a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you,
Second.
Michelle. All right, second by both Ursula and Kelly. Did you get that, Lisa? So Michelle moved it, and Ursula seconded, and all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.